Can you hear us at all now, or is it just very low?
Yes, they can hear you. Okay. And they can hear me, I think.
So we have to add some gain or something?
Yeah. But I'm not sure if they can hear you through my mic or...
Oh, okay. I can hear Henning, Ed says. Hey, Ed.
Oh, perfect. It's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, now
You
it's
guys are
just-
barely audible. Somebody
Yeah.
says. I think we should just scream a lot.
Okay, try that now.
Hey, okay, we're testing now. Now we added some gain to it, I think. Your music is very high. Audio is getting better. I would hear you if it wasn't for the music, somebody says.
Okay. So I added a filter to me, and I just need a filter for you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and then reduce the
I've already reduced the music.
oh,
now.
okay, okay. Alright, so how is this? Now we are... Alright, is it okay now? Nice, audio is great. Alright, cool, cool, cool. Okay, there we are. Now you need to remember to save this preset forever.
Jesus Christ. Okay, I think we got it.
Alright, cool. So then we can actually do a Q&A. So come with your beautiful questions and we'll see what we can do.
Once we get the broadcaster, this is gonna be so much easier.
Ah.
Then we can just
oh yeah, we can just click on the
Do that
buttons.
there, yeah.
How does one do audio? Oh yeah, we don't really know. We're trying very hard, okay?
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, OBS didn't want to accept the standard mic inputs. We had to create specific inputs for this preset.
Augustus is asking us, what is the best setup for skin painting in Substance Painter? So we have actually a whole tutorial on this, I believe called Painting Skin in Substance Painter or something akin to that, where the way I'm doing it is I'm starting with fill layers and then I'm blocking out from there. So you start with like a red fill layer and then you start with a blue one and then you're blocking in the different areas. Then once you've done that, then you start to paint over it like with bespoke colors and you do some texture overlays. The reason this is nice is because you can really control the different colors and like methodically build it up. If you need more red in an area, you can so easily add it.
That's loud.
Nice and casual.
Yeah, so the video that's playing in the background is just a playlist of trailers, unfortunately. So there isn't really anything specific we can show you on that.
No. Somebody's asking here if they're interested in going to sculpting, but they don't want to pay for ZBrush. Do you think the ZBrush Core is still a good option, or should I go back to Blender?
ZBrush Core is, I mean, that's a good place to get started, and especially if you've done stuff in Blender, then ZBrush Core is a good next step. And then do that for a while and see if you really like it. And I mean, if it's a possibility to save up for ZBrush, then I would definitely consider that. The thing about ZBrush and sculpting and Blender and sculpting is that it's one of the things we keep hearing about all the time. And while the development for Blender sculpting is definitely going in the right way, it has years left until it reaches the level of ZBrush, because it's not just about sculpting and sculpting feel, it's about how you organize everything, how you work with your projects in ZBrush. It's something that's been refined over the last, how long has Pixelogic been going for? Like 20 years?
Yeah, around over 20 years.
So it's just a different ball game.
Another one is, do you have to memorize all muscle names? That one is a fun one for you.
No, you really don't. It's, I remember, like I've taken both like an 8-week anatomy course with Scott Eden doing the anatomy. I have done traditional Russian style drawing focused on anatomy. I have read like a giant encyclopedia written by a German guy about the muscles and the bones in the body, and I remember nothing.
Yep.
I remember some surface anatomy muscles, something where I can describe stuff. Like take the muscles of the face. I don't remember any muscles except for like the orbicularis oculi around the eyes. That's it. It's more about the function of the muscles, what they do, what they look like, how they affect the surface, what they do to skin and fat that's on top of them. That's what's more important.
It's kind of like the video we did some weeks ago now on basics versus fundamentals, where if you need to make sure you're studying the right thing. If you're studying purely the basics, then you're not studying the right thing. You're studying the names of the muscles and all of that stuff instead of worrying about what's really important, which is the shape. You have to get the shape right, get the gesture right. We have a course coming out pretty soon, well, not soon, whenever it's ready, on more advanced figure sculpting by a really, really solid anatomy teacher. And in the course, you don't really focus at all on anatomy. It's really all about the shape and the gesture, the fat and the skin, and the general, like, making it feel natural. In one of the videos I just watched of him, where he's talking about how a lot of people actually get worse when they start studying anatomy, because now it feels anatomical instead of feeling realistic. You start to go into making all the muscles feel right and getting them from A to B instead of focusing on good natural shapes. You shouldn't really see the anatomy, like all the muscles, unless you're doing like an crochet study.
And yes, we do have a substance designer course in the works. It's pretty much done. We just need to kind of review it. I'm not entirely sure when it'll be out. Maybe in a few weeks, a month, something like that. But
yeah,
it's almost ready.
Yeah, the substance designer course is going to be phenomenal. I think it's going to be like around a 4 or 5 hour course where it just focuses on, well, how do you get started with design, or how do you start thinking about nodes, which is something a lot of people struggle with. Like the concept of nodes can be quite hard when you're actually getting started.
Someone wants to know if we have any insights into ZBrush 2021. Do we get special knowledge from
once you hit
Pixelogic?
100,000 subs on YouTube, then you actually get invited to a secret club where they tell you all the secrets. Yeah, I have nothing.
No, we don't.
We don't really know anything. We're not in any betas or anything. We know what you guys know.
That's actually an interesting question. With Substance now supporting UDIMs, if it'll replace Mari. The thing is, I still don't know. Even though they support UDIMs, I still doubt that they can handle the scale of textures and the type of data sets that Mari can handle. I haven't tested it out, so I don't know. Until they can do that, and if they can right now, cool. Then that's definitely a legit competitor. But they need to be able to handle those large data sets.
Yeah, so that's like really the core of what Mari is. The pain Mari was trying to solve as a product was not how do we do texturing the fastest we can. The pain they tried to solve was we have a crap ton of data and we have to make sure we can actually use this data in a pipeline. And the pain Painter was solving was, it's kind of crappy to paint textures. It's hard and it takes a lot of time and you can't really reuse anything. So they're solving two completely separate issues. When you're dealing with Mari, all the data is stored to disk. That's why you can't really paint in Mari like directly. It's all projection based. You're painting on like a glass window, and from there you're projecting it onto the actual model, and then it gets stored somewhere crazy on disk. But in Painter, it's all procedural. Every stroke is stored as a curve on the actual model. So Mari is a lot more efficient with how the data is used, but it's also a lot worse at creating fast textures.
Mike is asking, he would love to hear about the mindset of working in VFX/the games industry, how to be more resilient as an artist, communication styles, etc.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
You need to watch out for yourself. Don't assume anyone will watch out for you. I mean, this is something we can literally talk about for hours, but you should not assume the studio has your best interest in mind. If they're being like, yeah, we're going to give you this super nice contract, you're going to be like, cool, I believe he wants to see this super nice contract.
Also, one of the things I had a hard time with when I was in VFX was, like you mentioned there, the communication part, because I tend to be very direct in my communication and weed out a lot of the fluff when you talk. And the annoying thing about working in a professional environment is that, well, that's not what it's like.
Nope.
People like things to be sugar-coated. They want to be told in a nice way, and you have to play by the rules of the studio. And this was one of the things that I struggled a lot with. And if you can't deal with that, like say me, for example, then it can be you're sort of playing on hard mode. It's kind of annoying that it's not just about your professional skills, right? But it's also about your people skills.
Office politics is unfortunately a real thing, and you just have to take that into account. And also make sure you document everything you do. Put everything into emails.
Someone wants a shout out for their add-on. I guess here's a shout out to your add-on.
Yeah, cool add-on. Could you guys make a full project tutorial with ZBrush, Blender, Substance Painter pipeline with Unreal? Yes to all the first stuff, no to the last one, at least for the moment. We can use ZBrush, Painter, and Blender quite well, but Designer, that would be a whole different beast. No, sorry, Unreal, that would be a whole different beast.
It's the direction that we've started taking with Flip Normals is obviously we're still creating a lot of our own content, but we've also started hiring more people, hiring more professionals to do training for us, especially in the areas that we just don't know. And unfortunately, we aren't very knowledgeable when it comes to game and the gaming pipeline, not from a actual production perspective. So something like that would definitely be possible, but it wouldn't be with us.
There was a question, I think was deleted. What do you mean by documenting everything in VFX?
Oh yeah, it's good to have emails for everything. So if you, let's say you're doing a small fix or something, your lead or someone else in the team asks you to do something, just get them to send you an email. Just be like, hey, can you just confirm that this is what I was supposed to do? Because then you can always backtrack. If there's any kind of bullshit with what you were doing, what you were spending your time on, you can always refer back to those emails, seeing, yeah, there was a clear line of communication. This is exactly what I was told to do. And then there's no ambiguity about you wasting your time or not doing what you were told.
Yeah, it also not just protects you, but sometimes people just don't know what you're really doing. It really helps everyone if everyone over communicates to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Particularly when you have these big projects, like you have maybe 300 artists on a single project, it's pretty crazy in order to manage that. So you just want to make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do.
Can you point me to where I can start to learn about anatomy correctly? There's going to be three sources I would recommend. One is the anatomy course on Flip Normals by Victory 3D. The other is going to be the book Anatomy for Sculptors. And the third one is going to be one of Scott Eaton's anatomy courses. Those are probably the three ones I would recommend. And in the future, we are also releasing a anatomy type course.
And we're also releasing a course made by me, which is Introduction to Sculpting. That's going to be a really cool one. That's something that it's a little forever project now, and it keeps growing in scope. But that's going to be a project which is for people who's brand new to sculpting, and not just in a technical way. We're not covering ZBrush. This could be used for anything. It's more about how do you think about sculpting, because that's what people really get wrong. In the beginning, your issues are all what brush do I use and all that, and we cover of course that stuff as well. But it's more how do you think about appeal? Like try to explain gesture to somebody. Like it's almost impossible. Try to explain the concept of appeal to somebody. And these are the kind of things we're talking about in that course. And that comes out at some point.
Polygon is asking sort of if we can have less time lapses in our tutorials. And it's something we keep hearing, and we're definitely taking that to heart. It's actually something we did it in the beginning because we sort of assumed that people didn't want to see the fluff. But the more we've been doing this and the more feedback we've gotten, the more it seems that people actually want to see the entire process. So it's definitely something that we're thinking about going forward.
Yeah, we've been hiring some people now when it comes to making tutorials without any time lapses. It's a tricky one, because if you're dealing with something like you hire somebody for like a 5-hour tutorial, that you can't ask them to just, hey, can you just narrate like 20 hours instead on top of it? Like, you just can't do that. That would become a job which is 4 times as expensive. It would be crazy. But what you can do, which we are doing in one future tutorial, is that it takes them 30 hours to make the course, and the final course will be 30 hours, but only a portion of it is narrated. Like, that could be like a good in between, because it's not like you can choose between 20 hours of narration or 3 hours with time lapses. Those are not your options. It's the 20 hours with 3 hours of narration, or it's the 3 hours. Yeah, or it's the other one.
So I'm just trying to fix the audio a little bit. So someone was complaining about echo, and I think we might be running into that issue a little bit now.
Yeah, Polygon is saying that I don't think it needs to be all narrated. And then that's true. It's what we're thinking about doing there when it comes to not narrating everything is that we'll narrate whatever is needed to be narrated. For instance, if you're doing, let's say you're sculpting a face or something, and you have a portion which is where you need to narrate on top of that because you're doing new stuff. But then you have a portion which is like 2 hours, and you're just kind of like noodling around. You're improving the shape, but you're not really doing anything new. That can be shown without really narrating every single thing. The echo seems to have been fixed.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna apply that same noise gate to your mic as well.
Okay. Calvin is asking, have you used NG skinning tools and crazy?
Let's see. We might have to tweak these settings a little bit. No, I think they're good. Okay. I think this should be good. Now there should be no more echo. Audio should be crisp. Will you make any videos on Cinema 4D? Probably not.
No, and that's not for us to do.
No, we don't really. I think I might have opened Cinema 4D like 15 years ago, but that's about it.
Okay, here's a tricky one for you, Martin. But Mayrav Benedek. What can you say about the choices between a career in character modeling for games versus cinema?
What can I say about the choice? Oh,
yeah, games are filmed for character modeling.
Oh, very different. You know, obviously all the fundamentals are the same. The fundamentals of, let me give you an example. Like, we've been doing this for a long, long time and working with the fundamentals and everything. We can make a character for screen, for cinema, that's realistic quality, has everything that it needs to. We can apply those same fundamentals to games. We would be able to transition to games. The problem is we don't know the basics of games. We don't know really anything about baking. We don't know high poly to low poly. We don't know what goes into like resolutions. What exactly do you aim for? So those are sort of the differences. For games, there's obviously a lot of focus on that. Whereas for film, you focus on other things. It's more the high fidelity. You focus on getting it to look as good as humanly possible with as much detail as you can, because I mean you're not limited by details. Whereas in game, you will have to make compromises to make it look as good as possible with restrictions.
Yeah, also in games, you'll be working on a project for much, much longer. I've never heard of a single VFX artist who's worked on a film for like 4 years.
No,
it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's another
unless
thing.
it's Geostorm. I think Geostorm is still in production somewhere. Where, but in film, you're working for like 3 months maybe. Like I was in film for 4 years, and I worked on like 14, 15 movies. Sometimes it was like, one time at NPC I was working on The Mummy, and I was on there for like 2 weeks doing concept sculpting for it, and that's it. That's all you do on that movie. And then you're on to Ghostbusters for like 2 months, and then you're on to something else for like 3 months. So it's a much quicker pace in that way.
For color, whatever your name is, yes, the bundle would be a perfect place to start for you, especially if you have any kind of sculpting knowledge from Blender. It takes you through all the fundamentals of sculpting, also in ZBrush, facial anatomy, well, not facial anatomy, but facial sculpting.
Learning ZBrush, intro to ZBrush is there.
Yeah, so definitely, I would check that out.
Do you guys have a human anatomy course, or do you recommend one? Well, we just released a video like an hour ago on our favorite ZBrush products, and in there is an anatomy tool or anatomy series by Victory 3D where they cover a lot of stuff. It's something like 25 hours. A really cool course.
Cough Addiction asks, does the how matter in environment art portfolios, or is it more important to make it look as pretty as possible? This goes for everything when it comes to a portfolio that you're applying for. When it comes to 3D, you can't just have a pretty picture. You need to be able to back it up with actual technical skills as well. So if you just show a pretty environment, whoever is reviewing your portfolio is going to go, that's cool, but can I see how you made it? Can I be sure that you have the credentials to back it up? This is especially in the beginning. When you're applying, you don't really have any, games on your resume, or if it's film, you don't have any films. So then they have to be able to see that you can do it. After a while, when you've worked on titles, it becomes more forgiving. They're like, okay, you worked on this game or this film. We're sure that whatever you have in your reel, because it's from actual films, it's legit.
This has been a huge problem in modeling where people have come in with like super sexy ZBrush sculpts, and then you ask them, hey, can you UV map and retopologize it? And they're like, no.
Does the fiber mesh with dynamics and undwelled, all with dynamics in ZBrush, seem useful to you? I have no idea what that is.
Absolutely no idea.
I don't really use fiber mesh that often. Well, maybe like once every 5 years. I'll play around with it and get some subpar hair results, and then that's about it.
Ed Winter has a good question. Is it still hard to get a job now after all the COVID cuts, or does my portfolio just suck? Well, I mean, now
right
I haven't.
There are no jobs right now.
Yeah, right now it's pretty rough. It's a lot of the studios. I'm not sure about games, but at least in film, pretty much every single studio now has had like furloughs or really a lot of cuts. That's just Morten opening some chips.
Very subtly.
The problem right now is that every single movie has stopped production. So all the films they kind of had they were working on, they're finishing those up, but then there's nothing coming in. I mean, also in commercials as well. Then what is the easiest budget in the world to cut for any company struggling? It's commercials. Commercials are there to like increase your revenue, and or right at this point they're just like, we just want to survive. Alpida cries in unemployment. I'm sorry, Alpida. I'm sorry.
Augustus wants to know if we hate Cinema 4D.
Yes. So no, it's not that like it's a bad software. It's more that what Cinema 4D focuses on is different from what we do. Cinema 4D is probably the best tool out there if you're doing motion graphics, like bar none, with like the mode graph and all that kind of stuff. It's more that we don't really do that. Cinema 4D has zero advantages to us compared to the tools we're using now, which is maybe Blender, but also Maya as well. It's just not relevant for us.
I think an important thing to keep in mind is that we don't hate any software.
No.
Like I have I couldn't care less about a software. I have no emotional attachment to a software. It's just a tool for me to get the job done. If the tool sucks and I can't get the job done, I'll switch tools.
The reason we started using Blender at 2.8 wasn't because we had a deep epiphany that actually open source of Blender is the way to go. No, it was because they made the tool better. I mean, it was pretty straightforward. Okay, this is a question that Peter has been asking a few times now. I just saw it now. What are your thoughts on revenue-based payment? Getting paid at the end when the game is made from a percentage. To me, it seems very uncertain and not worth the risk. I would never do anything purely based on revenue split. Like, that sounds terrible. Like,
if it's a bonus,
yeah,
sure. If it's not, if you have your regular salary and you get paid for overtime, all the nice stuff, and they go, any revenue you get as a bonus, sure. But not as like, instead of cutting your salary.
Like, then you could, like, I don't even know what scenario this would be, and I've never heard of this actually happen.
Oh, I think they did it for like Halo, or it was like 343 Industries. Some kind of studio just did it, and the CEO was like, oh yeah, we're axing that.
But no salary at all?
No, they had a salary.
Oh, okay.
But they took away the like bonus for sales.
Oh, okay.
What it was.
Will there be some kind of Substance Painter series now that Painter has Udemy support? Well, I mean, that would be cool.
It doesn't really fundamentally change what you do in Painter.
But it means that you can make stuff which is a lot more hardcore. I would love to go more into it now that it actually has Udemy support. We just have to. Is it even out? I don't really think it's.
I think it was just an announcement.
Yeah, I haven't. I've been moving now, so I still don't have a couch or a desk. I've been eating all my dinner standing in the last few weeks, so I have bigger.
And Henning, he works over here in our apartment.
Yeah.
You know? We have the couch.
So. Yeah. I was sleeping in Morton's room for like 2 weeks.
Williams Brian asks, how important is having connections when looking for a job in the industry?
Very.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing. Nepotism it's everywhere. The more connections you have, the better. You know, you have people that can recommend you, people that can vouch for you. It does play a factor. You can definitely get a job without, of course. Then it's all about your skills. But if you have someone that can vouch for you and you have the skills, they're probably going to look at your portfolio before they look at anyone else's.
Here's a good one. How beneficial is traditional painting skills for a 3D sculpting texturing painting? That's like one of these. It can matter and it can also not. It's about having strong fundamentals. You can be a great like painter in terms of like you can replicate a photo or something and you know what all the colors are named or whatever, but it doesn't mean you actually understand anything if you rely on photos. But if you have really strong fundamentals, they will carry over. But your knowledge of the paintbrush and the canvases and all that is not relevant.
Someone is asking if it's realistic to market yourself as a creature artist, or would you say it's safer to apply as a generalist? I see a lot of creature designers and I've wondered how they landed that specific role.
Well, if you're good enough at doing it, it's like it's all based on your skill set. If you're an amazing creature designer and creature modeler, then awesome. But to put it like this, if you're an okay modeler, you can get a job as a modeler. But if you're like an okay creature modeler, like you need to be good at what you're doing.
Yeah, it's tricky because as a generalist, you're probably more likely to find a job just because you can do generally more things. It's not something that you need to be stuck in forever. Like entering the industry as a generalist can be a good starting point because then you can always branch out afterwards. Especially when you're just starting out, and very rarely does a studio hire a junior as a creature artist. It's not really a junior role per se. Because you need to be able to do so many more things pipeline-wise. They want you to be ready. They want you to have some kind of knowledge about working in production.
Here's one. Do you think do you think that going into 3D for the money is a bad motivation? I mean, what money?
Yeah. I was actually surprised. I legitimately hadn't thought about the money. until I got my first job, or until I got my offer for my first job. I just hadn't thought about it. It was just like, yeah, I guess I'll get a job. I hadn't really considered salaries at all. And then I found out that salaries in CG can be quite good. If you're good at negotiating, if you're good at playing the game, switching around, then they can be good. But as a motivator, no, never. I mean, nothing good if money motivates you, in my opinion. Then you'll burn out very quickly.
If you want some quick money there, like, I don't know, go to like a venture capitalist firm or go to Wall Street or something, like go to banking, like find a field where the main focus is on money. Do you have any useful tips on how to stay productive and be able to finish a given task on time?
Oh,
sometimes it's just hard to stay focused on the deadline.
It's take breaks. Honestly, breaks help me a lot, and try to avoid distractions. Don't go on Reddit so much. It's a hard one because it's like, for me, it's a habit thing. The more you make it a habit of trying to focus something, the more you'll get better at it. It's like any skill, right? So you just need to learn to master that skill.
Are there any positions that make more money than others? I swear riggers, effects people, and lighters make more than modelers. I mean, in my experience, they didn't. What really differentiated it in my experience was the seniority level. But I saw modelers who made far more than riggers, and I saw riggers who made far more than modelers. I'm not sure if I can say a general blanket statement. It's so much up to like supply and demand.
Bilal is asking a long question. I started a couple months ago and just read a lot of information before even beginning to make something. And I tried out a lot of programs. I'm sticking to Blender. Do you think Blender is enough to learn to start professionally, or do I have better chances going to uni and study something about CG? Third, as getting started into CG is important to know every field like texturing, compositing, if you want to specialize. I feel like I'm a generalist because I think doing just one thing is going to make me bored very quickly.
Oh boy.
Let's start with the uni thing. You don't necessarily need to go to university. We have probably, 100 videos about this subject now.
Yeah, we'll rage in there.
We're not very big proponents of universities, but they do have their place. In terms of learning and the pure learning experience, you will find way better information out there. Any kind of training website, probably Flip Normals.
I would say that,
because we've weeded out a lot of the bad stuff. It's a good way to get started, but what university gives you is it gives you that camaraderie, it gives you connections, it gives you a social life, it gives you other people to help push you along.
If it's a good one.
If that's not a problem for you, then being self-taught, doing self-studies at home and all that can be fine. But if you do need that community around you, I think that's where university really helps.
Now, is Blender enough? I mean, like, it might be. I mean
Blender is definitely enough to understand and figure out what all the things are, but it's always good to branch out. You don't need to stay locked to one thing.
If I were to start out right now, if I were to give somebody like the ultimate recipe to how to never be unemployed in 3D, I would be like, learn Houdini. You're never going to go unemployed, granted that you're good at what you're doing.
It's not that uni doesn't matter to get a job, because again, you have connections, but in general, when a recruiter is looking at you or your application, they're not gonna go, oh yeah, they're from this school. Maybe some will have some knowledge about it, be like, okay, this school, okay, that could be good, but in general, it's about your skills. And what we see a lot is people from universities, they tend to get the same assignments and to produce the same portfolios because they're not critical about it. And that's what I guess doing more self-study, even if you're in university, helps you with, helps you stand out more.
So what are some 3D artists you really like? Well, some of my favorites are Elpida Kyriakou and Emilia Stabell. They're really solid at what they're doing. Do you have any favorite 3D artists apart from Elpida Kyriakou and Emilia Stabell?
Here's the thing, I'm actually really bad with names. I'm like, okay, so it has to be like a specific subject or something if I need to...
Eunuch Pill.
Yes, he's a beast. Rafael Grassetti, big fan of his stuff. I think everyone is. All around badass.
No, those are the only two artists.
That's it. I feel like I must know more people, but it's like I know their work, I just don't know their names.
Yeah. But also you have people who you work with as well in production as well who are phenomenal.
What do you think about scans and substance smart materials?
Awesome.
Making lazy artists cause it prevents them from learning the structure of how things are made and just skip to the end result. I mean, that's not really the scans or the smart materials fault, it's the artist's fault, right? I think they're awesome because once you have a trained artist, that can just speed up their workflows significantly. Again, it's up to the artist how they use them.
Yeah, it's like if you want to cheat yourself out of learning, then just go for a scan and call yourself a character modeler. But if you want to genuinely learn, then you're gonna have to learn the fundamentals of it.
I'm not sure I know any other Brazilian CG artists. Well, I do, but
there is this one I can never remember how. Glauco Longji. I think he's Brazilian. He's so good that it's rude.
So I worked with a Brazilian in VFX. His name was Luis. He's probably my favorite artist to have ever worked with. And person, yeah, he was a great guy. In general, like Brazil just produces some really good. Well, I shouldn't say Brazil produces. People from Brazil, CG artists from Brazil tend to be amazing.
Mario or substance for texture and for film? Well, that depends entirely on what you're doing. If you were to do like a prop, I would probably use Painter because it's a lot easier with smart materials and all that. But if I were to do a full character, like I would never ever do a character in film, at least nothing bigger than like a digidouble, like a medium-sized digidouble. I would never do that in Painter just because you just need the tools of Mari.
Here's a good one. Do you guys have a formula or criteria when estimating a time to get something done for a client? What is the craziest job you had to turn down because the time frame was just nuts?
I had one which was, can you model the head of the statue of Jesus in Rio? And I was like, hey, Morten, you want to do it?
Yeah, that was a pretty fun one. I think in terms of estimating, it just comes down to you having done similar jobs in the past. If you're new to this, time yourself over a couple of days, couple of weeks, figure out how long each step in the process takes for a general, let's say it's a character, you know, how use a base mesh and how long does certain parts of it take, UVing, you probably you spend like a day or two on that, and then whatever you end up with a number, double that, because there's going to be feedback rounds, there's going to be back and forth, the client's never going to be happy with the first thing that you turn in. That's my general rule for it.
Here's a fun one for you as well. And Morten, would you do a course focused on sculpting things like your Cornari or Le Soldat de Marathon?
So like actually sculpting that?
Yeah, I assume I interpret it as a premium course on sculpting, something like that.
Oh.
Like real time. That could be cool.
That could be really cool.
Yeah,
actually.
Infringing on all the IPs.
Well, I think Le Soldat de Marathon, he's good.
Yeah,
he's out of copyright now. Right?
And Kunari.
Yes.
He's very...
No, it's a demon with horns.
Yes, that's true. That would actually be a really good one. I think people will love that. Something like real time, step by step, follow along. Actually,
doing something akin to... Let me see if I can find it. There's this Turkish artist. You know the guy who always does the horns and like...
Yes, I don't know his name. I can't remember.
You know how to spell his name?
No, I don't know his name.
Okay, so if anyone in the chat knows who I'm talking about, Turkish guy, does crazy sculpts or textures, generally with women. He tends to render them in blue light and and they always have horns. Video stopped. It's now playing again. Well, okay, this is just the last one. Let me just get the playlist.
Okay, this is one I think I'd love to take. What is the worst job project you ever worked on? And perhaps the hardest sculpt you've done from memory? Well, the worst job is also the best job I've ever had. That was one of the last jobs I did at NPC, and it was Ghostbusters 2016. That was a train wreck, which was on fire, and it was beautiful. It's one of these where sometimes the crappiest movies are the most fun to work on because everything is on fire. Now, that's amazing if you love working when stuff is on fire, which I sometimes do because it keeps it very interesting.
Okay, I'll answer that one as well. That I think the single worst job I actually had was one that came from you. Well, not from you, but from your previous workplace.
I think I know what you mean.
Not gonna mention the workplace, but basically,
It's some kind of little animal, some kind of little insect, some kind of little bug, you might say.
I had to model like some kind of commemorative, shitty Norwegian coin or something, and so Danish and Norwegian are pretty close in terms of the language, right? So they send me an email in Norwegian. I very politely. Oh, that's the guy, yeah. I very politely said to them, can we keep this to English? I don't want there to be any miscommunication. They reply, sure, let's do that. Next email, Norwegian, they didn't give a fuck. And they continued in that. So there was a lot of misunderstandings in the project. I ended up working, I think I ended up working for like 20 hours straight just to try and finish this project. At the end of it, I delivered something half-assed, kind of shitty because we didn't really understand each other. And they were like, well, this isn't at all what we wanted. And I was like, well, fuck. I was still a student at the time. And they were like, can we just pay you half and call it done? Yeah, whatever. Let's pay me half and then I'll never work with you again.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
Yes,
Remember
he's the guy. Niasi Selimoglu.
He's so good. We've just been checking out his art station. It's so inspirational. And sorry for completely mispronouncing that.
It's the rule of the internet.
Okay.
You have to mispronounce names now.
This is one for you. Do you have any advice on how to do work-life balance now as I'm in my last year in uni and doing the courses online at home, contrary to how I used to work prior to COVID?
Yes, consistency, have a schedule. Don't just because you can wake up at 12 o'clock and go to bed at like 3 a.m. Make a schedule that you can stick to. If the schedule is you wake up at 12, you go to bed at 3, cool. But then stick to that consistently. Because if you can do it consistently, you'll get much better results, basically.
And also when it comes to it, work-life balance, unfortunately, isn't really a thing when it comes to you studying. You know, of course you should be partying and doing all the fun stuff, but you just have to push it. You have to make sure, of course, you don't get sick or, you know, you don't like physically get destroyed or you get pneumonia or something like that after Peter Chan course. You need to make sure, watch out for yourself, but you just have to push the intensity because it's a competitive field and the last year of uni is the last time you have really, really a lot of time to make a big difference for your portfolio.
Cam really wants to know. He's using Max, ZBrush, and Painter for his tasks. 2 years of experience. Do you guys think that Blender is necessary for me to learn in this vast industry? No, not at all. I mean,
that's what we've been ranting about for like years now. Blender isn't necessary.
No, I mean, it's a good tool to add to your belt, but it's by no means necessary. Like,
there's nothing you can do in Blender which you can't currently do in Max. Like, you know, okay, there are things you can do, but there aren't things you want to do. You're not going to be like, you know what? I wish I could do 2D animation or compositing or video editing right now in like, if you're a regular 3D artist.
Okay, so the Kunari dot question was more like a workflow aimed at creating a real sculpture, not characters. That could be interesting. I worked with a guy once who, like, he did a lot of freelance jobs for like crazy rich Russians, like producing sculptures.
Oh, that's cool.
Someone had another question. What was that? Did I learn Maya in 2020? Probably.
I don't know what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a nurse, I don't think you do. But if you're, you know, it just depends on what are you interested in? What is your end goal? If you want to work in film or games, I mean, Maya and Max, or Maya is not going anywhere anytime soon. no matter what you might think looking at Twitter or some of the other social media platforms where they're talking about how they're all dead and Maya is gonna disappear, it's not gonna disappear.
No, Bilal, it's not important to know every field, even if you want to specialize. It's good to have knowledge about it, but you don't need to be a specialist in every field, because then you're a generalist.
All right, here's one for you as well. What makes a 3D model production ready for VFX?
Okay. That's
a good question.
That is a very good question. You have different kinds of LODs, basic, like different kinds of resolutions. There's a certain standard of UVs that's specific to the studio you're working in. There's scales you have to consider. There is, the kind of topology, the kind of base meshes that they use. Everything is very specific to the studio you're working in. Yeah, that's a very tough question to answer, actually.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what is the purpose of the model? Well, if it's going to be used for effects, it needs certain levels of specs. If it's going to be used as a character, it needs to be a different level. In general, it's like stick to quads or triangles, stick mostly to quads and triangles wherever. So avoid n-gons, particularly if you want to stick with ZBrush. When it comes to characters as well, try to make your topology very nice and even. Don't have stuff which is really stretched polygons. And make sure that it's also clean, like no crazy manifold geometry, or in general keep your scenes very clean. They also will need UVs as well. You can't really do a model in film without UVs.
Just a few questions. Yes, Maya 2020 will work on a GTX and an i5 8th gen 8 gigs of RAM. And no, we're not a couple. And there was another one. When the Substance Designer tutorial coming up soon in the future.
Do you think the rookie centers are getting better each year, or is it just me?
People are just getting better. I think it's because there's information and education online is just becoming more and more readily available. So people have an easier time studying and figuring out the things they want to learn. But
and also the tools are also getting better. 10 years ago, if you had to texture paint something, you would, Mari didn't exist 10 years ago. Painter was years away from existing. And you had to basically do it in Photoshop or something like body paint. So just there, it's so much easier. So just from a purely resource point of view, 10 years ago, your workflow might be poly model something up, do some crappy UVs, do your textures in Photoshop, maybe do some sculpting on it, and have some non-photorealistic shaders, and you render with mental ray. No, you can't do that.
For the movie Venom, do we think that one person modeled the character, or that kind of production would have passed through many hands? Well, interesting question, because we actually were in the studio and Henning did work on Venom. You did the texturing.
Yeah, I worked on the textures for Venom. I think I might have done a little bit of sculpting as well, and maybe on Riot. Can't remember. But yeah, anyway, for him, there are multiple people who's working on characters like that. You'll probably have a general concept sculpt which comes into the studio, which is general, maybe has some general proportion, but it's like a shitty model. It might be a model where they had to make a lot of different variations very quickly, and then they ended up with one, and they were like, cool, let's go with this one. So you get a model which might be like 1 million polys, and now you have to refine the crap out of that. And then this model will have to be retopologized, and so many different versions of design internally as well. I spent I think I made around 50 versions of the patterning, the white patterning on Venom for it, just design-wise. It was absolutely crazy.
Just gonna send Bobby a few links to some hard surface stuff.
Ida is asking, do you have any advice for graduates who are finishing university now? Considering it's harder to find a job, what do you do until you get one? That is a good question. What do graduates do right now?
Pray.
I got ominous very quickly. I mean, it just sucks. It just sucks when there aren't a lot of jobs available. I mean, if I was graduating right now from like animation workshop or something like which we attended, I probably would have moved back to my parents for a little bit and just focused on portfolio for a few months. I know that students who's been graduating this year who needed internships, they've had a really hard time actually getting internships. There just isn't a lot of if you're being hit in the face like this with a global pandemic, you can't just go, just try and apply all the places. No, there aren't jobs right now. So yeah, I don't really have any crazy good solutions for that.
Henning, are we doing any Mari tutorials?
We really should be doing Mari tutorials.
We've been talking about this for like 4 years now.
Yeah, we should probably be doing Mari tutorials. It's one of these. I've been using it for such a long time in production. I was 50% a texture artist in VFX. I know how to use this tool quite well, but we just haven't got around to doing it. I think also because people moved on to Painter. I mean, like if I had to spend like a month making a tutorial right now, I would probably not spend that on Painter. I would probably use that on. Oh, sorry, I wouldn't spend that on Mari. I would probably spend that on Painter.
Lizard Limited says he's 16. Use Blender. Is there a place I can apply for my first work? I would probably see if there's anything in your local area, maybe like an ad agency or any kind of company that you could approach and ask them if they would be interested in doing some kind of 3D. That's what I did. I think I was 15 at the time, and I started working actually with an ad agency. And that was just like, hey, you do 2D and branding stuff for companies. Would you maybe be interested in adding something like that to your company? And then I continued doing that. I worked for another kind of ad agency where it was just like, hey, they were also looking to expand a little bit and try out 3D. So that could be a good way to get started.
Yeah, local studios can be great in that regard. What would be the best approach to reach out to people you will look up to for critique without making too much of a burden? Keep your emails.
Oh yes.
For the love of God. Whenever I have a few emails which come in and it's like a wall of text and it's like being hit in the face. The way I solve those emails is I close the email. Like you just don't have time for it. So keep your emails short, to the point. Ideally something where they can answer yes or no, or like have a few prepared questions and just be like, make sure they can answer in as few words as possible.
And don't start your message with just a hi.
No.
And then nothing else, and then wait for someone to get back with hi, and then, hey, I wanted to ask you a question. Just get to the point. Just be like, hey, I have this question about a thing, blah, 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 blah. Keep it short, very concise. Because a lot of people don't really have that much time. And as much as we want to help and everyone wants to help, it has to also be convenient and fit in with everyone's schedule, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, we have to also watch Castlevania with our girlfriends and watch vampires. You don't have a limit. You don't have unlimited amount of time.
How many hours do you guys spend on a computer a day, and do you give a break after some minutes? Yes, I don't know hours wise, 8-10 hours a day maybe. Try to take a break once an hour. I don't always succeed.
We're pretty good at doing walks though.
Yeah,
we've been good at that in general.
A couple walks during the day just to stretch and look at something far away so you don't constantly look at a screen close up.
Like we've been taking that quite seriously, like from like day one. Like when we worked together in at DNEG, we used to do like at least a 20-minute walk like every single day, where we just left the studio. And some people were like, can you do that? And we're like, I suppose.
Yeah, we did.
we just did. Sometimes that walk would be a little longer than 20. It happens. But I mean, make sure to get breaks. But I mean,
how to be good at life drawing?
Do a lot of life drawing.
Keep practicing it. Just keep doing more and more with everything else. Yeah.
But also, when it comes to this, make sure you practice correctly. Don't just replicate what you're seeing, but try to understand the forms and get feedback on your work all the time. That's so important.
I'm currently working as a character artist in LA. How often should I be accepting new studio contracts and or upping my rates, especially during COVID? However often you want, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, keep upgrading your rates as often as you can, really.
Yeah. Push it as far as you can. People can always say no.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
You want to be at just the rate where they're going like, okay. When they go like, yeah, that's fine. You're like, ah, crap.
They can always say, oh, sorry, we can't afford that. And then you're like, well, what do you think would be fair? What can you afford? Let's see if we can negotiate around that.
Okay, Martin, do you always work with reference, or are there assets you use every time you start modeling?
It has many answers, this question. I always say use reference. I don't always use reference because I'm lazy. Sometimes I just go into ZBrush and I start sculpting from memory. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If it looks like crap, probably because I didn't use reference. If it looks good, it's probably because I use reference. Yeah. Sometimes I don't want to be burdened by it. Sometimes I just want to doodle around. But yeah, reference is pretty key. There will always be like a Google search or two, but you know, when I'm doing references properly, I have PureWave open and you can always look at that. And it depends on the type of work that I'm doing. If I'm doing tutorials where I'm showing the basics from start to finish, I will almost always start from, you know, nothing, like a sphere or something. When I'm doing any kind of work for myself, or if I've done it professionally, I always start from a base mesh. I want to do as little work as humanly possible when it's under a time constraint.
Do the rookies really do a check? You figure out and you have less than years experience in industry who can enter. I mean, it's more like an honor system. It's more like, you know, if you clearly have like 3 years of film work in your reel, like, you know, you're just gonna go do it. Don't do that. But like if you have 11 months or if you have 13 months, you know, like just don't abuse the system. It's meant to generally improve the lives of students and give them visibility. So if you don't fall into that category, you should just not apply at all, I think.
Yeah, we have this one tutorial from Mari. It's hard surface, but wait, is it Mari?
I'm trying to find Mari tutorials as well. Like we
have one by Zach, but it's like Mari and designer. It's not.
You should post that one. That's a good one.
I just
yeah,
did.
That one's a good one.
But wait, didn't I? Yeah, it's there. That one should be good. We should definitely also.
Yeah, we should.
When I say we, I mean Henning.
Yeah, when I say yeah, I'll do that, I mean I'll hire somebody. Do you think working in a studio or as a freelancer is better, especially when doing motion graphics? Well, we can't really say about motion graphics, no. But that just depends entirely on you. If you work in a bigger studio, you're probably gonna make less money working in a studio. A lot of freelancers make more money, but it's also you as a freelancer, you never have a day off. You're always working. Very stressful.
I'm curious to know who people think we are. Like who's Morten and who's Henning here.
Okay, yeah. So who do you think I am? Empty.
It's just like drum roll. Anyway, do you guys have any passion to talk about the CG porn market? It's huge. It's just gonna get bigger and bigger. So yeah, that's probably a good way to make money as well. There's a lot of money in CG porn.
Yeah, I mean,
start a Patreon, start doing some lewd CG content.
Yeah, I have no problems with people doing that. You know, do whatever it takes to pay the bills. You can probably meet a lot of interesting people in that field.
Hey, people got you. Yeah, that was Henning.
Yeah, that was me. I am Henning, and this is Morten. I am now Morten.
Yeah, that doesn't work. Your voice is deeper than mine. So.
Okay, I am a hobbyist and I've been doing 3D for about 4 years now, and I've still no final published projects because I'm always comparing myself to other people on ArtStation. I mean, comparison is the thief of joy. If you keep comparing yourself to other people, you will always fail. You might, let's say you're the best person in the world at organic sculpting. You're gonna be like, man, I don't know texture painting. I'm terrible. You're best texture painter in the world. You're like, man, I don't know organic sculpting. You cannot compare yourself to other people. There are always better people. You just have to push out your work and honestly just hope people enjoy it. And the most important thing is that you enjoy what you're doing.
It's not that we're ignoring your Instagram DMs. We just don't check Instagram.
It's a lot of work to check all the social media channels. Kelly Pfeiffer is asking, how long is your summer sale going for? That is going until the 2nd of August at 23:59 at GMT +2.
So, if you're looking for great deals and you're currently in a learning mood because of COVID, head over to the Flip Normals marketplace where everything is currently 40% off. And by everything, I mean everything.
Yeah, that was, I hate myself a bit now.
You hate yourself for me saying it.
It's in person. No hairstyling tutorial, honey. No, we are probably getting an next-gen tutorial.
Probably. No, I mean, I've never played World of Warcraft. Have you?
I had a lot of friends who did it, and I learned 3D instead.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad I did that.
Can you delete the Flip Normals Discord server? Yes, that would be very easy.
It's impossible. It's taken a life of its own. Also, by mentioning Flip Normals Discord server, we should now check Discord to make sure that not a million people are now entering, because that's usually what happens when we mention Discord publicly.
Morten is the not bald guy. That's correct. But Morten is the slowly balding guy.
I mean, maybe your girlfriend should just shave you in the middle of the night. Can I email you my work and expect a reply with constructive criticism? Probably not. You can join our Discord and you can ask in the comments there. We just don't have time to give people feedback, unfortunately. It's this you know, we're not just like YouTubers. We actually have a company where we do all this, where we spend all day on this. We just don't have time to do too much.
What are you talking about? We are only YouTubers.
We're only YouTubers. So smash that like button.
Yeah, it's actually, YouTube is a very, very small part of what we do. Most of it is focused on building the brand and building up the company. YouTube is, we're free learning as and a marketing channel, you know.
Yeah, it's a really cool one, but it is a small part. All right, here's one for you. Do you think that ZBrush is going to destroy Marvel as designer now that we've seen a video of some new features from ZBrush?
An excellent question. I've put a lot of thought into this, and you know, actually, I think ZBrush doesn't stand a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dead now.
No, it's two completely different things. You could use the cloth brush in ZBrush as a additional form of sculpting, detail sculpting, but it's not going to kill it. I mean, Marvelous it's a specialized tool. It's like saying, well, because ZBrush has poly painting, you don't need Substance Painter or Mari for finished characters with multiple kinds of maps. It's like, well, you could probably get to a similar result. It would just take you a lot longer. So Marvelous Designer is king when it comes to the clothing and the kind of work that we've done, especially for films, with the complexity, the costumes. It would be stupid to do that in ZBrush.
Berserk asks, Maya versus Blender, what is better for modeling and UV mapping? For modeling, it's fairly similar. I feel I have a bit more control in Maya. The pivot is a bit better, and there are a few things there which gives him a bit more control, but you also have the modifiers in Blender. For like retopo, Maya is like miles better, which is indeed a part of modeling. And for UV mapping, like Maya is like 10 years ahead of Blender. So overall for modeling, because of those extra tasks, I find Maya to be a lot better. But for pure polygonal modeling, I find Blender to be very much the same.
What happened to Mudbox? I never hear of anyone using it nowadays.
Well, that's very easy. They got acquired by Sky Matter got acquired by Autodesk, and they did the regular thing which a big company does. They shut it off, or just they don't have any passion for it. It becomes very much a project manager tool internally in a giant company, which is an engineering company.
No, they had an update back in, wait, what year is it now? 2020?
Yeah, I think so.
2016. I think there was an update for
yeah.
Modbox there, so still going strong. The thing about it is that it's an amazing tool from a pipeline perspective. I wish ZBrush had the kind of integration and ease of use that Modbox has, but you know, it doesn't. It's like if you could take the sculpting feel and the tools from ZBrush and put them into the Modbox interface, that would be great.
V-Ray or Arnold? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're both great render engines. Arnold will chuck through anything. You just throw computing power at it. V-Ray, you probably have more control to break the physical aspects of rendering. But, I mean, personal preference, I guess, at this point.
Arnold is easy peasy lemon squeezy to use. Like, you literally can't, like, screw up Arnold when it comes to it. Like, there's no settings to really understand. It's very easy to use, but also there is no way to cheat, so render times can be astronomical at times.
Here's actually an interesting question. What's the difference between Substance Painter, Designer, and Alchemist?
Oh.
Interesting. So, Substance Painter, right? It's kind of like in the name. That's where you paint your textures. You can use smart materials that you've authored from Designer. Designer is, it's a procedural workflow, not necessarily for creating textures. It's just for creating images that you happen to be able to export out into different looking formats. So people tend to use it for authoring tileable specific kinds of materials. Now, Alchemist sort of takes that to the next level where it's actually a material authoring software. And I mean, Alchemist, I believe, is still kind of in beta.
Yeah, it's very early on.
Alpha-ish. It's showing a lot of promise. It's like you can use the smart materials that you have in Designer, in Alchemist, author new materials with different kinds of filters that you could make in Designer that are but are more pre-made, ready-made in Alchemist. If that makes any sense.
As a creature designer in industry, am I required to be a specialist in rigging?
No.
It helps you if you have the basic rigging skills, just so that you know how it works in the other departments, and so that you can pose your characters. But you will not be able to. You will not be expected to really learn anything about rigging whatsoever. It's all a bonus.
Yes, we do offer 3ds Max tutorials. Just go to the Flip Normals Marketplace and filter by 3ds Max. Do we think photogrammetry will take over in the future for human characters in games and VFX? In 10 years, I imagine the process will be flawless, negating the need for someone to model humans. Yeah.
Already kind of is. I mean, if you're doing a digidouble, and a digidouble is a digital human, in film today, I don't know about games, but at least in film, it doesn't really require artistic skill to the same degree as it did. You have a scan and you recreate the scan, you retopologize the scan, or you use like Wrap 3 on the scan, because it's so much more accurate.
Oh, here's a good one. What do you think ZBrush needs the most right now?
Pipeline? A rewrite? I think ZBrush needs to look deep into itself and figure out what it wants to do. It needs a solid UX overhaul. It's like every single time there is a new version of ZBrush, I realize how terrible the UX actually is, because then you have to learn how it works, and it's always weird. It's always like memory based. You have to memorize how a feature works instead of just intuitively understanding it. Like, while you have features in Maya, Maya is clunky and is old, but when there's a new feature, you just kind of get how it works. You click on the button and it kind of does the thing you expect it to. But in ZBrush, you never know how to click it. You have to hold down like 16 modifier keys, and what do you do?
Any good alternatives to ZBrush?
No.
Yeah, no. That's why everyone who works professionally really tends to stick to ZBrush. I mean, Modbugs is great, and for the people who sort of learn to sculpt in Mudbox. You know, I've seen amazing sculpt. You can do the same kind of fidelity in terms of sculpting in Mudbox as you can in ZBrush. For me, it's a personal preference. I just prefer the sculpting feel in ZBrush.
Thoughts on Redshift? Now, I've only used Redshift a little bit, but that was a very refreshing experience, and it was blazingly fast. If like my personal preference in engines is Arnold, because I'm stupid when it comes to engines and I just like to click the button. But and it comes with Maya. But if it wasn't, if I had to choose another engine, I would probably stick with Redshift.
No, Matthias, not currently. Do you have any tutorials I could recommend there?
And here's one which Peter has been asking now. What are some redundant questions you've been asked by recruiters?
Redundant questions?
I don't really know. The recruiters I've been talking to have been pretty good, to be honest.
Yeah, I've never gotten a, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
No.
It's more like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
But I've never had the bullshit interview questions. That's never happened to me.
No, in VFX, the recruiters are generally really good at what they're doing. If it's... Yeah, you can have the people who are very HR-like, where they open up the recruiter handbook and they ask questions there. But in general, it's been really good. I had one time where... Henny, can you do a hair reveal?
What?
A hair reveal. What is a hair reveal? Yeah, I actually shaved it off and have it in a wig somewhere, so... Best way to do hair for stylized human characters. XGen or... I mean, XGen is pretty solid for that. If I were to do stylized hair, you know, it depends how stylized you're going. But like Pixar stuff is pretty stylized, but they're using real hair. I would have sculpted it up first so you art directed properly. And then I would have... And then I would have recreated it using XGen, like kind of like almost like you're retopologizing it. You're modeling curves snapping into the models you have.
Is it worth getting into learning Unreal? Do you think real-time rendering will be the standard in the industry close future? I mean, if you want to get into games, yeah, for sure.
Why do a lot of artists choose Blender for 3D concept art? Well, because it's very accessible. Blender, like, you know, we've had a fair few Blender rants over the years now. And the Blender rants are always like, it's not production ready or, you know, whatever it might be. And we stand by all that. But where it is phenomenal is at prototyping and coming up with new ideas. That is where it's absolutely phenomenal. It's free to download and it's very quick to get started and to try things out. The fact that you can get something out with Eevee so fast and with cycles, it's actually a game changer for concept art.
Yeah, it's like when I first started using it for that, we've done a few videos on that or streams where I did like a Death Stranding type environment and a Dark Souls one, and it's powerful in the way that it's, you know, you can throw stuff into Eevee, just play around with it, add some fog, change the lighting, change the colors. It's just much faster than anything else I've tried when it comes to that.
Here's a good question. Do you think the market for creating 3D assets is going to be outsourced to India and China and not the US? I mean,
yeah, I think it already kind of is.
Yeah, it already kind of is, and it's sure as hell not done in the US anymore. The US was huge in like the 90s and early 2000s particularly for VFX. But I mean, honestly, today there was very little VFX done in the US. It's the main hubs are London and it's Vancouver and Montreal, and that's about it. Now they're trying to do something in Australia as well. But in terms of outsourcing, Bangalore and this the other one, Mumbai. They're done by the DNEG and NPC have offices there, and I believe ILM uses China a lot.
Yeah.
It's
and they're not always happy with that.
No.
Henning, can Fact Archive write you into a fanfic hentai?
I would say no, but yes.
Oh god.
Does it matter what university I go to learn 3D modeling? For learning a specific skill set, you shouldn't go to a university. If you go to university, now you triggered me, so I apologize about that. But when you go to university, you don't go there to learn a specific skill set. You go there to learn all sorts of things. If you go to uni, you're going to become a generalist. The amount of 3D modeling courses you're going to have throughout your university degree is nothing. You might have maybe like 4 or 5 weeks in total of 3D modeling. So if you want to become a good 3D modeler, you should 100% just go to YouTube or buy some tutorials. I can guarantee you, if you have a budget for $100 for tutorials, you would get much better education than you will at essentially any university in the world for pure 3D modeling.
Can anyone apply to work for Flip Normals? Well, you can apply to work to create tutorials, but not in the sense of, like, I guess, working for Flip Normals. We don't really hire people that way. Any other good question? Gnomon, I hear, is really good, but I have a feeling it's very expensive. Yeah.
Gnomon, if you're gonna attend Gnomon, I believe it's in LA. I mean, you're gonna be paying around $170,000 for that, unless you can afford that. And by afford, I don't mean you can get a loan. By afford, I mean you can actually pay that in liquid funds today. You have them in liquid funds, then okay. But apart from that, Morten, I will veto your decision to go to Gnomon. It's very expensive. Oh, this is an interesting one. This is for you, Morten. Do you think it's worth to look out to learn a whole new language just to have access to their tutorials, like learning Korean or Chinese? I see pretty often good tutorials from them.
I would say 100% no. They might have good tutorials, but unless you're learning that language already or planning to learn that language, learning a language to then learn CG, I don't think is the good way to go about it.
I mean, if you try to learn, like, I don't know the other languages there, but I do have some knowledge of Chinese because I tried to learn it really hard. You can spend 5 years learning Chinese and you might be able to order something at a restaurant. Trying to learn CG from it is no point at all. Are you guys ever coming to Bournemouth Uni? I would love to see you guys there. Well, Morten and I were there 2 years ago. Probably not coming there again.
No, that was a long trip.
Yeah.
And now we would be coming from even further away.
Yeah, we wouldn't even be let in. So, I mean, Bournemouth is a cool uni. But I gotta say I'm not super impressed by it. It's supposed to be the best uni in the UK, and I would have said from what I'm seeing from the students there and all that it's right in the middle of where it should be. It's not a particularly good university, I think. I might get in trouble for this in the future.
What about languages for job opportunities? Again,
learn English.
If it's like, if you're planning to learn the language or you're moving to that country, sure. But, I mean, there's a lot of job opportunities that use English. So.
Henning, why is action so frustrating? It is by far the leading cause of my hair loss. Yeah, why do you think I lost my hair? Started just when I started with XGen. No, XGen is one of these tools. It's made in production. It was made by Disney to work, I don't know, it was Tangle or something. And it's a great tool internally, but the UX is awful and the integration with Maya is also awful. It has so many UX issues, just meaning that you don't really know how to use it and it doesn't make sense. And it also has so many bugs. And the problem is when you're new to the tool, you don't know if you screwed up because you screwed up or because the tool is just buggy as hell.
Getting really warm in here.
Yeah, we have an issue here in the room that it gets crazy warm. Hey guys, I'm actually going to Norman. Any networking tips, please? I love you, Henning. Boy. Thanks. I mean, if you're at Norman, talk to the students, befriend the teachers, and not in a cheesy way, but actually get genuine connections with people. Networking for me isn't so much sit down and you network a professional sense and you have your business cards. Networking is more you make friends with people. Those will be your strongest connections, and if not friends, they can be professional contacts as well, where you're friendly with them. It really helps a lot to genuinely ask people for feedback, and when you ask them for feedback, listen to them and show them the updates. And then try to invite them along for things. I always think it's fun when I've been teaching somewhere and the students ask me to go out for the pub or to go for dinner or something like that. Because these people aren't like god tier humans. They're just humans who happen to have a different job. And they also enjoy human contact.
So Matthias asks, is there any easy way sculpting scales for dinosaurs and other stuff like that? Well, it depends on the quality you want. If you want sort of good quality, you could use some alphas, custom-made alphas, then interspersed with like a little bit of custom sculpting to make it all blend together. I guess if you want to make it a little more procedural, you could do some stuff in texturing, or you could just go the insane route, like Rowena did for our dinosaur tutorial, and just hand sculpted most of them.
Yeah, in short, there's no easy way.
No.
You're just tackling a hard problem.
For what's it called? Jurassic Park World University. I don't know, something. Yeah, they sculpted all those scales by hand. Actually, they did them in texturing, and yeah, each scale was done by hand, and then they did a displacement map for them. So.
That's how you get control.
Yeah.
Here's one from Ali Ahmed. Hi, I'm only 15 years old. Alongside my studies, I'm investing my time in 3D, specifically Cinema 4D, Substance Painter, and ZBrush. I have doubts if I will make something out of it or not. Do you have something encouraging to say to Ali?
Just keep going with it. I mean, do it on the side, and when you have time, and see if there's any specific area that interests you. Maybe branch out, try some different kinds of areas. You know, just see if you like it. You know. Unless someone is forcing you, and even if they are, to learn CG, it's like you just treat it as a hobby and see if you sort of like continue to enjoy it. It might be something that stays as a hobby. It doesn't have to turn into a professional job.
Yeah, I see there are a fair few young people in this chat, or in general in our Discord as well, asking like, should I do CG professionally, or should I just stop it? Because, you know, I've been doing this maybe a few years and I'm not feeling very confident in it. But I just want to like give you some encouraging words here, that every single person who's doing well in 3D today, they started off the way you did today. There is nobody in the world who's amazing at CG, you know, before they're 20, or, you know, it takes years and years and years to learn it. So if you work hard and you keep being methodical about your work, you ask us feedback a lot, you interact with our artists in the community, you can have a really interesting career. Cool thing about this field as a career is that you can work anywhere in the world. You'll have friends from all over the world as well, and you can make pretty decent money with it as well.
Here's a good one. Is creating a large network on Twitter worth it for networking and learning in the industry? Would it be more worth it to spend time in communities like Discord server? I would say be careful with both. Don't put your effort there. Put your effort in your skills. It definitely helps to make connections, even online, but be very careful with that rabbit hole of trying to make it by becoming big enough online. That's, in my opinion, not the right way to go about it.
Yeah, if you have 100,000 followers on Twitter or Instagram and your skills aren't good enough, nobody cares. If you have 0 followers on Instagram and Twitter and your skills are good, awesome. What is the name of the tutorial that was on the screen? I guess we're talking about this one.
That's Travis David's
Cyberpunk bomber jacket.
Right there, on cue.
What do you guys think is the best uni in the UK for CG? Okay, so I don't think there are any good unis in the UK for CG. I think the best ones will probably be Bournemouth and University of Hertfordshire. But you know, what you're competing against is some of the ones I've seen are like, it's almost like they're scams. What they're teaching is to the level where it's you're not learning anything. Where third year students are, you know, they don't know how to model or texture or how to do anything. So I'm not sure if I could ever recommend anyone a UK university. That's my opinion. Plenty of people who would disagree with that, but I've seen universities from around different places now, and I'm not impressed with the UK one bit.
There's 2 questions. Quick follow up. The Peaches question: how would you leverage that network to find work? well, ask your network. Is anyone looking for this kind of person for this kind of position? If anything comes up, think about reaching out to me, something like that. And then, how do I ask for feedback? I always feel kind of bad asking past professors. Like, is that like going around the professor to ask for feedback? If that's the case, in my experience, most professors, when it comes to 3D, are garbage. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's just a fact, because most teachers that do 3D, they can have a general knowledge about the tools, how to work with them. But if you want to get into specifics, let's say it's specifics about environment modeling or creature texturing, you'll be better off trying to find an artist, reach out to a couple of them, and see if anyone wants to give you feedback that way. The problem with professors, or not the problem, it's just the nature of their work, is that they have to be general. They have to know a little bit about every area so they can guide students in the right direction, but they are by no means the best person to ask about feedback.
I think also I'd like just to talk more about what I was saying before. I think there are phenomenal teachers in the UK. There are people who are great people, but what I think about when I'm saying I think the unis are bad is I think systematically they're terrible. You're teaching CG in the wrong way. You have people who really genuinely try to do their best in their job as teachers and professors, but the system around them, it doesn't allow them to teach it the way it should be taught. You should, if you go into a good university, you should never really spend time on writing essays, ever.
Any tips on how to become successful in Sweden? My dream job would be to work on games in a major studio. Well, something like DICE or EA. Look at that. Figure out what exactly they're doing. It's probably like The Division, any kind of EA related game, and then sort of tailor your things to what they're doing.
Yeah, there isn't anything special about Sweden per se. It's become a good artist and then tailor it to the studios there. Here is one which was really interesting, which caught my eye. Do you think 3D artists will lose their jobs in the future because of AI and machine learning? Okay, so this is Henning's theory of how the world works. The way I see it when it comes to outsourcing is, first, the job is being done in the West. It's being done in London, where a team of character artists will model all the characters. And then it's being done by the same amount of people in India or China or more low-cost countries, and they do the exact same job. And then you reach a point where the tools in the West will become so good that the jobs will go back to the West, but being done by a fraction of the people. You see this in automation in general, where factories are being outsourced to India, and then like 50 years later, they're coming back, but they're being operated by like 2 people in like the UK or something. I think the same thing will happen here, where you're going to have like a small team of really talented artists who will utilize machine learning and AI tools to do their job.
Which is better, on-site artist or off-site? What are the benefits each one may offer? Well, I guess off-site artist is one of those things that might become more prevalent now because of COVID. I mean, if you're an off-site artist, if you're doing it as a freelancer, you might be able to charge more. If you're an off-site artist, but you're still hired by the company, I guess it's just, now you have to have meetings online, do all the stuff that you would be able to do in person. So it kind of depends on the kind of job that you're doing, I guess, but there's none of them is better. They're just different. It's like with university, if you do it by yourself, you're not necessarily going to have the physical community of people and seniors, supervisors, and to have their knowledge to sort of pull on. But yeah,
I think it's really bad to be remote if you're a junior. I think you really need senior staff around you. Here's one. Henny and Morten. This question is for each of you. Do you have a favorite quote or saying that keeps you inspired and motivated?
No.
Have one? Like a mantra?
No.
There is one I keep thinking about occasionally, and it's suffer the pain of regret or suffer the pain of discipline. And that basically means, for me at least, it's kind of like suffer the pain of discipline today and go to the gym, or suffer the pain of regret tomorrow because you didn't go to the gym. Suffer the pain there.
It's one of those things that it's like, yeah, I just don't. It's like, personally for me, it's all this motivational stuff, and like it just doesn't work for me. I know it works for a lot of people. It just doesn't register for me. I'm just like, yeah, I'll just do some stuff, I guess. But no, I don't really have anything that comes to mind. I don't know any quotes or... Sorry, I'm not the best person to give you inspiration here.
We did a video on inspiration some years ago, and Morten was basically like, I don't do this, I just work.
Yeah, I think that relates. There was another question. Yeah, a loss of motivation normal in this field, or is it just procrastination? I mean, I lose motivation all the time. It's there's the motivation and the self-doubt in your skills. It happens every single project for me. But as you keep going, you sort of start to figure out that it just happens every time. And there's like this dark period of your sculpt or project or whatever that you have to get past.
So painful.
And you will get out of it on the other side eventually. If you just keep sticking with it and it's like in your project, maybe it's best to just... put that project down and move on to something else if you really can't get past it.
If you have to recommend a university in the whole world, which one would it be? Now, this is tricky because I haven't been to every university in the whole world. So you kind of have to investigate them properly. You can't just make a list, these are the best universities. There's so much bias there. Morten and I attended the animation workshop in Denmark. That's where we met. So there was a question earlier if you have any connection to the Vibo universities, and we do. That is a phenomenal one, but it just depends. It's not a phenomenal one if you want to be a hardcore effects or rigger, or effects artist or rigger, for instance. So it really depends on what you want to do.
Here's one. Have you ever felt you're taking too long to finish a project? What do? Yeah, it happens all the time. I tend to... Once you start becoming aware of it, it's easier to fix. For me, it was very much focusing too much on the small details, making sure that every single line was straight and perfect. So it's just trying to become aware of that. Basically trying to become more sloppy. If you want to speed things up, you need to be more sloppy. But you need to strike a balance between what you think looks good, but also judging it from the distance it's going to be seen. If it's like, let's say it's a character, a background character that you're going to see from like, 100 feet away, then don't start noodling details like just a few inches from the screen or from your eyes.
Is it possible to become a professional by being self-taught, taught from YouTube?
Yes.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that you shouldn't be afraid of spending a little bit of money on tutorials. That's like if you're starting a new hobby, you should buy books on the subject matter. You should buy the tools you need. But we went to university, and I strangely still consider myself kind of self-taught in a way.
Yeah,
which is weird because like so many tutorials while I was in uni. I learned a lot of fundamental design, but didn't learn a whole lot of 3D in that sense. So in short, you can 100% become an excellent professional of being self-taught. I recommend getting the resources you need, like books, tutorials, whatever it might be, and then supplement that with YouTube and free content online. And join the Flip Normals Discord, or we burn it to the ground.
And Peter says, Morten, your Abby character was super cool. Do you guys think he will do a tutorial on sculpting more muscular women? And how do you do that properly? Well,
I think you should.
Here's the thing. I cheated. Because I didn't do it for a tutorial. I just wanted to make a cool image. It's one of those things where I could have spent many, many, many hours on it. I just used the base mesh. Use the base mesh. Yeah, I'm guilty.
Liar.
Use the base mesh of a woman. She had some definition, and I just looked at some female bodybuilders and I just extracted a top for her and gave her a dumbbell. You know, I was thinking about giving him one of those Joe Rogan gorilla dumbbells or like
Kettlebells.
Kettlebells. But I was like, I can't find any pre-made gorilla faces, so I just skipped on that as well.
That's what you do for personal pieces. You know, if you're there is no point if you want to do a muscular woman. There's no point in starting from a sphere just because.
But yes, could do.
We could do from a base mesh.
Could do from a base mesh, but could also do it. I'm not sure how much interest there would be in it. I would be curious to see if there would be any interest in that, sort of generally.
Lame Duck Studios asks, can you put that example on screen? I don't know what example you're talking about. Maybe Lame Duck Studios thinks I'm you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Was there an example you had?
Well, I guess find Abby.
Oh, Abby. Okay, yeah. Have you ever done a DMT? No.
Wait, is it like the drug?
There is this question here.
No.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the example of the bodybuilder. Okay, so just again, I am Henning, and the other guy is Morten.
I'm Morten. Right. Here you go. This is Abby. Controversial character.
Muscular women. Turns out they exist. We were starting going to the gym now after a long time of not, and turns out there are muscular women out there.
Yeah, it's impressive.
No. So impressive.
I'm not gonna scroll down there. Be blocked on YouTube or something.
Loving your intro substance tut. Any news on for more advanced continuation? Well, thank you. That was a lot of fun to make. We don't have any news on anything right now. We are very busy with a lot of stuff at the moment.
Did you guys play The Last of Us 2? Yes, I did.
I know.
And I loved it. I thought it was great. It's one of the most memorable gaming experiences I've ever had. Right now I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima, which is also great. Like a samurai version of Zelda.
Mm-hmm. Any tips to understand how to work with node-based texturing? Yes. In the future, you should watch our Introduction to Substance Designer by Chung Trafficander, which is it's a phenomenal tutorial. It really focuses on exactly that. It will be out in the fall.
I want to return to the thing that Elpida asked about with Abby, because I actually think it might be a sort of a big misconception a lot of the time when people do art pieces, especially when you enter the more professional territory, because people see a lot of videos on YouTube of people creating things, and it's always like, oh, here I start from a sphere, and that's usually is done maybe for two reasons. One, to impress, or to sort of show you, okay, I've got the skills to do it from the beginning. But when you're doing stuff for yourself, when you're not recording it, if you just want to make a cool piece, always start from a base mesh. I mean, not when you're a complete beginner. You should sort of understand the fundamentals of anatomy and proportions. But when you just want to make something that looks cool, you got to do it as fast as you can. So using a base mesh is very common. Everyone does it. And for some reason, people, especially in the beginning, seem to think that it's like, oh, you're cheating. You have to do everything from scratch, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, the way I think about it is you can optimize for different things. If you optimize for learning, and that's what you want to get out of the project, you should very much do the project from a sphere or something like that, where you actually learn something. But if you optimize for the best visual result, then use whatever trick in the book.
Actually, maybe we should just pull it up on screen real quick. Show you in ZBrush what it looks like.
I have a hard time generating concepts in my head. How can I improve it? I mean, this is a thing that I'm not sure if I've really talked about before, but I mean, I did a lot of concept sculpting in film, and I've been designing a lot of things here and there, and I do not have the ability to visualize characters in my head. You know, I can visualize stories when I'm reading them or whatever, but I cannot design things in my head. I know there are some people who get everything right in their head and they just draw it down what they're seeing, but I have to be very methodical about building up my characters. I do a design revision based on the shapes I'm putting down, and then I revise and refine that. Can you be a good modeler without being good at drawing? 100%.
This is the final version of her. We just threw on some clothing, but I actually like the other version better. The sports version. You have more, even more pants on. That's the version of Abby, basically. No, this was done from a female base mesh, so not a male base mesh. I just beefed her up. I looked at a lot of CrossFit athletes, actually, because they tend to have crazy core. Obviously, this is more defined than Abby was in The Last of Us. Didn't have access to sick nutrition.
Didn't have protein shakes.
But yeah, that's the one.
Do you think around 4 years of learning modeling is enough to get my first job? I'm 17 and wondering what to do in life. I mean, that's like how heavy is a stone. I mean, 4 years can be 4 incredibly efficient years and 4 incredibly inefficient years. I mean, I've seen people go from not learning 3D to being hired at a Premiere film studio, like my girlfriend did. Going from not knowing 3D to working at Framestore in like 3 years. You can do it as a modeler, but they have to be efficient years. You cannot just doodle around and do a little project here and there. You have to be hard working in those 4 years. I've seen this before where I've seen people who's like maybe around 20 and they're like, I've been doing 3D since I was like 12. I've been doing it for 8 years. How come I'm not that good yet? Because you haven't been studying for it. You've been having it as a hobby. Whenever you're starting art school, you always have these people who's like, they've been drawing their entire life and they're not very good at drawing because they've never really been challenged or never really done it on a more serious level than purely like you're purely doing it for pleasure.
Yeah, this kind of relates to what Fast Archive is saying. Do you think working 10 to 12 hours a day is enough for a student? Well, it depends. If you're working inefficiently, then no, it's not enough. But if you are efficient, yeah, you could probably do less. You could also do more. It's so individual. There's no magic formula that you can just follow. One quick trick to fix everything or make you better. It's just consistency, work smart, keep at it.
With Unreal Engine 5 on the horizon, do you think technology is going to make UVing obsolete, much like poly counts are becoming for PC and console gaming?
Poly counts are by no means becoming obsolete, and neither are UVs. It's very much a factor. We can push the limits, and we do. So poly counts for characters in games, for example, are just becoming higher and higher. It's because we can cram more detail in. It's kind of like when we started getting more and more powerful PCs, render times went up because now we could do more things with the render engines. We had ray tracing, we had subsurface scattering all of a sudden, better metallic surfaces, materials, that kind of stuff. So no, I don't think it'll be obsolete.
Yeah, no way. I mean, also UVs as well. They tried to make UVs obsolete with PTEX, and now nobody uses PTEX apart from like internal things like how XGen works and how some different things. But like the core things of 3D, like topology, all that, it's not going away.
So just while I have you guys here, I just want to remind you that we currently have a 40% sale on everything.
Yay!
Summer sale is live. So everything on the Flip Normals marketplace is now 40% off. If you have any sort of final questions that you want to get in, I think you should do that now because I think we're tired.
Late.
We're about to sign off.
It's
we'll pick a few more.
Yeah, so let's have maybe 2 more questions.
Drum roll.
Okay, here's one. Do you guys prefer doing pores by hand like Ian Spriggs, or do you prefer using displacements like Texture XYZ? I prefer to do it using the Flip Normals skin kit trademarked.
It's one of those things where, okay, here's the thing. I'm always impressed by the level of quality that Ian outputs. It's crazy. He's a phenomenal artist. But it depends on what you're doing. And there's definitely ways to optimize it. Doing it with textures keeps it more procedural and easier to scale up. You can do some sculpting where you sculpt individual ones, extract maps from those, combine them until you have more and more specialized and detailed maps for pores. But if you do it by hand, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to do them by hand like that. I mean, they're not even going to be that good. They might look very hand placed. I would have 100% used something like the skin kit or maps from XYZ. What course is the trailer from?
It was from female characters for games.
We just had a YouTube video coming out where we talk about this specific course, so just check our latest video for a link to that.
It's from Next to Education by, I think, Nicolay is the teacher for it. It's a great course. Let me just quickly just find it.
Can I get into the 3D industry without personal professional connections? Yes. If you have the skills, you can definitely get in. And then you will get the connections.
Female character creation in ZBrush. That's the one.
Should I use Huion or Wacom for learning experience? Honestly, doesn't matter. Use whatever works for you. I really don't have any brand loyalty to tablets. It's when I've been buying tablets, it's always been Wacom because they've been the ones who actually worked well because that was the only one which was there really. But whatever tablet works for you, it's really not about tablets. It's about what you can do.
Thank you, Ed. Yes, your kind of support always helps.
Yeah, Ed, you're awesome. It was a lot of fun meeting you in London back a few years ago.
That's kind of what keeps us going, right? It's just having really nice people that support the courses that we put out so we can make even more courses. Yeah. Whether it's, and you don't even have to spend money with us. It's like if you watch our YouTube videos, you recommend the YouTube videos to other people. Everything helps us just grow and create more and more training for you guys. That's kind of the goal of all this. We want to make affordable, high quality education that, at this point, it definitely rivals and is better than what you can get at universities. It's just about tailoring it and getting it structured enough so that people can sort of follow a curriculum on Flip Normals. So hopefully people won't really have to think about going to university.
KTB is saying she love your courses, guys. You helped me so much.
Thanks, Katie.
And maybe the last question we'll take here. We can do one each of these. What's your favorite course from your marketplace?
Course.
A tricky one.
Tough one. I think that Simon Fuchs has an amazing one. His gun tutorial. That one is crazy. For any kind of hard surface stuff, props, that one is top notch.
I would say for me it's a tricky one. I will interpret this in a selfish way because we made a lot of the courses, and the course I think like for which we've made, which I think is maybe of the highest quality, is probably Introduction to Maya. That was released a few months ago, and that took ages to make, where we really went into we cut away all the fluff and only talked about the stuff we use on a day-to-day basis. And then we make like a really cool Spartan helmet showing all the stuff at the end. Crazy hard course to make, but it was a lot of fun to do.
All right. We say that's it?
Let's say that's it. And we'll probably do more of these streams in the coming week or so as well.
Yeah.
So maybe like a portfolio review or another Q&A.
Oh, that could be cool. Sort of like a live portfolio review. Oh yeah,
nice.
Let's definitely do that. Okay, next up, we're doing a portfolio review.
Morten has made an executive decision and there is no negotiation.
That would be cool, yeah. So keep an eye out on the social media channels. It'll go out on Twitter, probably mostly Twitter. And yeah, just keep up to date. There'll be, within the next week or so, we'll do maybe 1 or 2 more and we'll do a portfolio review. That would be cool.
Before we end, I am just going to send a link to the courses we just mentioned. Sent the link to. So these are the links. Sending the links now.
Thank you for the support, Chris. That means a lot.
Thanks a lot.
All right. That it?
That's it. All right, guys. We'll see you on the other side.